So, good morning, everybody. This is Rajneesh Kaushik, and I'm very excited to be part of this Pune Tech session, tech community, where I'm going to deliver the first session in this great community, navigating the data jungle, unveiling the hidden insights with Microsoft Fabric notebooks. So, this is very important topic because, as you know, that AI is booming, and in this booming world, AI works on the data, and if we don't know how to navigate this complex data, right? Because all the insights of AI comes from the data. So data is a central part of any AI initiative. And that is where it becomes very important for us to understand how do we navigate this huge, humongous data, which is coming from different data sources, and then make a meaningful insight out of it with a great tool like Microsoft Fabric, which is a brand new tool launched by Microsoft in last year, November. Okay, so this session is going to be really interesting, and where we are going to explore how we can utilize this tool to its fullest potential and gain insights out of it. So before I start, let me introduce myself. I'm Rajneesh Kaushik and I'm based out of New Jersey, US. I'm a Microsoft MVP and Databricks champion. I'm a TOGAF certified enterprise architect, and I have over 22 years of industry experience, and I'm an ex Microsoft as well. Along with that, I have been, awarded as a Microsoft certified trainer from last 14 years. And here is my website and YouTube channel, where you will find lots of videos and my blog post here. And this is my LinkedIn profile. So please feel free to subscribe to my channel and my website. Along with if you want to stay connected with me, please connect me on the LinkedIn. Okay, so with this, let's start the session and see what do we have in the agenda. So agenda is very tight in terms of there are lots of topics to cover. So let's see what we are going to cover. So first and foremost, we are going to cover what is the introduction, what is it all about, why this topic, why I have chosen this topic, right? And then we will jump to a basic introduction about Microsoft Fabric because I'm sure that most of you may not know about Microsoft Fabric, right? Because it's a brand new tool and very less people know about this tool. So this is going to be really interesting to know this tool and its capabilities and why this tool is a game changer in Microsoft Word, right? I mean, everybody's you talking about Fabric. And last week there was a Fabric conference in Las Vegas, which was attended by lots of individuals. So this tool is really amazing and lots of buzz about it. So we'll discuss about it. What is Fabric? Then we will work on how the Fabric works. What are the workspaces? How to set up a workspace. Then we will understand how Fabric utilizes a unique feature called notebooks so that we can get insight from the data coming from the Fabric, right? So notebook is one of the important feature. Then we will learn if you want to use notebook, then obviously you need to load the data inside the Fabric. And that is where the topic where we are going to touch upon how do we load the data. And when you say loading the data, it does not mean just loading it, but also making sure that data quality is perfect, right? And data is optimized when it is loaded, right? So all these scenarios we are going to cover. Then we will understand about how do we explore this data with the help of Python pandas. And 90% of people know what is pandas because pandas is a Python library which is quite popular because of its extensibility and features it provides out of the box, right? And then we will learn about after you start exploring the data, how do we make sure that the data is clean without any errors, issues, or any mess up in the data. Because if you are using there is a old saying like, garbage in, garbage out. If your data has lots of garbage, then the outcome will be also like that. So we need to make sure that your data is cleansed before it is utilized in any insights. Then we will touch upon couple of topics on the descriptive statistics. So we are not going to cover too much mathematical, but we are going to touch upon some topics about how do we use statistics methods in the Panda. And Finally, we will touch upon visualizing the data to make an insight out of it. And then we will take a very basic real world example where we are going to jump to the demo, and we will utilize all these things, whatever we are learning here, in a real time scenario where we are going to fetch the data from the diabetics data from a data set, and then we are going to analyze this data with the fabric and execute all these steps which is described here and make an insight out of it. So with this, let's start the first part of it. We are going to cover what is being covered in this. So we session is revolving around introduction. First of all, we are going to cover the Microsoft Fabric and power of notebooks. Then we will learn hands-on data exploration and analysis. As I told you that we are going to demo a end-to-end scenario where we are going to fetch some data from the Azure datasets and then start exploring the data and perform a end-to-end analysis on the top of it. Then we are going to learn about the practical applications of, and then how do we visualize this data? Because the picture speaks better than words, right? And that is where the visualization, power of visualization comes handy. And if you really want to make a good sense of a data, your visualization should be very important. And that is where we are going to learn how Fabric helps you to visualize this data sets in a more meaningful way. Then we will have interactive Q&A, and the our learning objective will be majorly towards data exploration. What are the different techniques which we can use for harnessing the full potential of Microsoft Fabric notebooks? And what are the processes which we can be used for transforming the raw data which is coming from the different sources and make a meaningful insight out of it with the help of visual representations. So this is all about what we're going to cover. So this is a brief introduction. So let's go to the next part. What is Fabric and why it is so popular nowadays, right? So Fabric, Microsoft Fabric, right? If you see, like 10 years ago, right? Um, you might be using some or other databases like Oracle or SQL Server or any other relational database, right? Now, after some time, I would say that almost 6 to 7 years ago, there is a concept called data lake came into the market, where all the data is stored in a huge lake, right? Which is nothing but a storage. Whether it is AWS, you are using S3 storage, or in Azure, you are using ADLS Gen 2, right? You are storing the data in that humongous lake. Now, what we used to do, we will store this data, park this data into the lake, and after that, we are going to ingest the same data into the relational database or data warehouses, right? There are lots of data warehouses like if you see Snowflake is a data warehouse, and then you have Redshift or Synapse. These are data warehouses, right? So this has been the journey of, like, if you see, this is predominantly a pattern which is being used to ingest the large amount of data into the data lake. And from that data lake, you are going to ingest it into the data warehouse to make an insight out of it. So this is a particular pattern used across the industries, right? Now, Fabric has changed the game, right? So with the help of Fabric, first of all, you can create a real-time analytics insight, which means that as and when the data is coming from sources, right, on the real time, you are getting the insights, right, instead of processing this data in a batch mode. So that is a one part of it which makes it a unique tool, right? And it is a SaaS offering, so it is based on the top of Microsoft Azure cloud. It is one single tool which provides you different capabilities. Like one example, you can use this tool for data science related use cases, right? You can use this tool for very large data set. Like one example I can give you, like petabyte of data you can process with this, right? It has a unique advantage that if you only know Python, this tool is good for you because you can code your Python notebooks into it. You can use a R language, you can use a Scala, you can use SQL language. All these languages are supported out of the box, right? And not just that, if you are working in a team, right, and you want to collaborate among the different team members, right, you can collaborate. These real-time collaboration is possible with this tool. where multiple developers log in into the same notebook and try updating that notebook. So this is called a pair programming, right? This is very much possible with this tool. Then on the top of it, it boosts its productivity for the developers with the help of Copilot. Like Fabric has its own Copilot, which is amazing tool, right? And then it also uses Microsoft ecosystem. So which means that you can use Azure machine learning, you can use your custom query language KQL, right? And it provides the powerful visualization of Power BI on the top of it because it is based on the Power BI. Power BI is a main part of it, right? So that is where this tool comes handy. It gives you so much power in your hand to make this end-to-end ingestion, machine learning, right? And then data exploration use cases. And if your data is too huge, right, you can use a Apache Spark pool in this, right? Apache Spark can, handle humongous data, right, without any boundaries. So that is where you can use this tool for IoT and streaming analytics use cases, right? And it has so many connectors to connect. Like, you can connect to SAP, Oracle, any databases. Almost 200 plus connectors are already there, and they keep developing in new connectors as and when time passes. So that is why my Fabric is very useful tool. So Fabric is one single tool, right? Which is a complete analytics platform. You don't have to see before Fabric. The problem was that for every particular use case, you need to use a specific set of tool, right? But with the Fabric, you don't need so many tools, right? Like because it is everything is inbuilt into the under one umbrella, right? It is a lake centric and open platform. Why? Because Lakehouse is a new pattern emerging in the industry, and everybody in the industry is using Lakehouse. And this Fabric platform is based on the lake centric and open platform, which is a Lakehouse. And when I say Lakehouse, we are going to discuss what do you mean by Lakehouse. It's a brand new concept. Like most of you might have not heard about it, but this is a brand new concept, and we will learn about it. What is Lakehouse exactly, right? So this platform also it has its own AI capabilities. That means you can use Copilot capabilities, and with this approach, it can empower the business users in every domain. So when I say Fabric, what does it mean? Fabric has different components into it, right? So for ETL perspective, you have a data factory, which is a well-known component, exactly same data factory you were using before Fabric came into the picture, right? So it's the same data factory here. Then for the data engineering use cases or data science use cases or data warehouse use cases, you can use Synapse platform, which is a well-known platform, well-established platform in the industry. But again, that comes under the umbrella of Fabric again, right? Or you can use a Synapse real-time analytics. Again, this is a part of the Synapse. Power BI is one of the most popular tool for reporting, and Power BI is a part of the Fabric again. And Data Activator is a brand new tool which got introduced into Fabric, which is used for stream analytics capabilities, where you can have a large set of data coming, with the stream, and you want to analyze that data and make an insight out of it. And on the top, like all these tools, right, these tool works on the top of one lake. One lake is nothing but a data lake, and this is branded like one lake, which means that data is coming in the lake, right? And it is getting all the tools on the top of it, they are using this lake, the data which is coming in stored in this lake, they are actually using this data. Why this is very important? Because there is no data duplication here. All right, because if you see the old pattern, right, old pattern, you will first ingest the data in the lake and then you will again ingest into the warehouse. But this pattern is not useful because there is a lots of deduplication of the data. And problem comes when you have a petabytes of data and your batch jobs are running for 10 hours, and after 10 hours you again try to ingest the data into lake to warehouse, and from warehouse to further in the reporting tools, it becomes a nightmare, right? So that is where power of Fabric comes, where you need to store the data in one place and utilize in multiple tools, right? So now these are the tools which we just explained, like Power BI. Data Activator is used for real-time detection and monitoring. Data Factory is a tool where we use a Power Query, same Power Query which you use in Office or same Power BI as well, right? So Synapse is a core part of it. Synapse provides you the machine learning capabilities, stream real-time analytics capabilities, engineering capabilities with the transformation, ETL or ELT, right? And it also provides you Azure Machine Learning Studio and Spark Engine. Spark Engine is very powerful because it has its own unique capabilities like ML flow, right? You can use a PySpark language on the top of it. So that is where the Fabric comes, and it's very important platform. So now when I see all these platforms, they are used. They are using the One Lake, and One Lake is a core part of it. So when I say One Lake, what is the advantage of being using One Lake? One Lake, first of all, it is a unified analytics platform. When I say unified means it is it is one single platform, right, which has compute and storage, which has security and governance centrally managed. So which means that if I am actually granting access in a particular notebook or in a particular Synapse part component, it is reflected across all the components. That is called unification, right? So that is why unification is very, very important, because prior to Fabric, the problem was that all these components were working in a solo mode, right? There is no interaction. So if you want to change something in one component, you will have to do the same thing in another component to make it happen. So there was no consistency, right? So if you are granting access to the Synapse, then you need to grant the same access into the data factory and vice versa. So the problem was like that. But now with the unified platform, you have everything under the one umbrella, and then same governance works across all the components. So that is the advantage of it. So, okay. So this is deduplication of data. What is deduplication? One copy is a key component of OneLake that allows you to read data from a single copy without moving or deduplication of the data. So see, when you have duplication of the data, right? If your data is small, it's okay. You can duplicate it 3 times, 4 times. But if your data is huge, terabytes of data every day, and I have seen scenarios like one example I can give you that one of the customer, right? They are having a petabytes of data coming every day from different data sources. And in that case, if you duplicate that data, petabyte of data, how huge it is, how much storage cost you are incurring in that. So it's not even, a good practice to, duplicate that data. Okay, so with this, now let's move to a very important topic, setting up the workspace, right? So workspace, if you guys have already learned about Power BI, right? It's exactly same workspace which we set up in Fabric. So what is workspace? Workspace is a structure created in Power BI, right? Which helps you to create a working environment in the Fabric so that you can work in that environment, and very dedicated environment is there, right? And in that dedicated environment, you are creating your assets into that environment, you are protecting that assets in that environment, and then you are working in that. So for creating a workspace, I'll show you how it is achieved, right? And why. So workspace is a very important concept, because when you create a workspace, you can assign a capacity of the Fabric to that workspace. Why workspace is important? Suppose I have different departments in my company, finance, accounting, right? And I want to make sure that finance department get a top priority when the month ending comes, right? Because they need to process so much data. So what I will do, I will create a Fabric workspace for finance. I'll create a premium capacity for them so that their work is not stopped, right? And if suppose I need to give a trial capacity to developers, right? So those developers will get a different workspace where they will be using a trial capacity. So like that, I can segregate the different workspaces for different purposes, right? And then I can also make sure that these workspaces are accessed by certain set of users. These workspaces have a different capacity or power, so that these workspaces should be used for a specific set of scenarios, right? Like finance, accounting have a different workspace for different scenarios. Similarly, you can adjust the workspace configuration by adding the users, deleting the users. You can access your workspace by, very good UI Microsoft has given you. And the best practice around creating a workspace is you need to make sure that you have a good naming convention, and then you make sure that your workspace performance and resource utilization is monitored so that you don't end up adding, extra capacity or spending too much money on that workspace, right? So let's see how to create a workspace. Very simple. First, you will go to the Power BI. There is a workspace option here, right? And then you will go to create a new workspace button. Then you will put a name of the workspace. And then after that, you will grant access to that workspace by adding the users here. And then here, this is where you are going to put a mode, licensing mode, whether you are a pro mode or a trial mode or any other licensing capabilities. So this way, when you apply that, right, and then you can also specify that what storage format you want to use. Like, is it a small data set storage format or a large data set storage format? Small data set means your data set is very small, like couple of MBs of files are coming every day and you want to process those files. So it's a small data set. But if you have a petabytes of file coming, terabytes of files are coming, and then the data is keep coming and it's a huge data set, then you will be using the large data sets. And then you will say that apply button. And once you apply that, then immediately what will happen, you will, like in this example, I'm creating this demo workspace. So it will create a demo workspace here. Now, in the next screen, you can see the demo workspace is created. And then now you start working in the demo workspace. You can, in that demo workspace, you can create different assets like reports. You can create scorecard, dashboard, data flow, streaming data set, streaming data flow. All these capabilities you can add based on your own requirement for the workspace. And once you keep doing it, you keep adding the stuff and then you're ready. Okay, so this is one. Then what is the notebooks in the Microsoft Fabric, right? So notebook is like if you might have used Jupyter notebooks or any other Anaconda notebooks, right? It is exactly the similar kind of concept here, right? What is this? It's an interactive document where people can contribute the code, or they can add the pictures, images, visuals, right? And this is a live code environment where people can start adding the code, or two or three developers can start coding the same notebook, right? It supports multiple language. It has a code execution and debugging options available inside the same workbook. So it's something like a development environment, small development environment, which is a web-based environment where you can start using it to run your code. All the languages, whatever we have explained, all these languages can be coded in this environment, right? It also provides a Git collaboration, like Git versioning, right? So you can use any Git tool, right? It has an inbuilt version control with the integration with the Git, right? It can connect to different data sources, right? And on the top of it, you can also use this notebooks for training the model, building the model, training it, or deploy this model in a large scale environment. So this is why the work notebook is very, very important, right? Because pretty much you can write any damn thing in the notebook. Like one example here, this is one of the notebook example where I'm actually converting the data frame into the pandas and then trying to understand the head element, which is the first headers of the data frame. Okay, so now we understood what is notebook, why notebook is important, and now after the notebook is done, you are going to use this notebook to load the data inside the fabric. Because without data, what will you do with that, right? You cannot analyze the data. So for that, we have a loading concept. So how do we load the data? So in this example, which we are going to discuss, we are going to load the diabetics dataset from the Azure Open dataset, and we are going to use a data ingestion process. For data ingestion process, we are going to use a Spark pool in the Fabric, and there will be code snippet I'm going to show you to load this data into the Spark. And then we will say that, the data frame dot show or data frame dot head method to sneak preview that data. What kind of data is this, right? So this is data set loading, right? And I will show you the code how it is done. It's very, very simple. Now, when you load the data, it's not just loading the data the way it is, right? You need to make sure that your data is, um, there is no inconsistency in the data. When I say inconsistency means your data should not have a missing values, right? If there are lots of missing values, first name is missing in the table, what will you do with that data? Even if you load that data, right? Or if your data type, you are not sure. Sometimes the data is showing string values, sometimes it is showing integer values, and data type is inconsistent. You cannot make a insight out of that data if your data is inconsistent, right? If data has lots of duplicate values, right? You cannot make sense of it. So it is not just loading the data as it is, but making sure that data has all this inconsistency removed. There are other concepts like, consistency checks, statistical summary analysis. And once you identify these things, right, then the next step would be to clean these inconsistency, right? So how do we clean this inconsistency? There are multiple options available, like handling missing values. Like if you think that some values are missing, right? So then what you will do, you will remove those values, or you will delete those particular values, or you will replace those values with, depending upon the approach which you are using. Then you will use a data transformation mechanism. So data transformation mechanism is nothing but how do you transform this data? When you transform this data, you may normalize this data, right? Because data might be coming from different sources, right? So in order for you to utilize this data, you may have to normalize that data. So data normalization is one of very important aspect. Then you may also clean the data by removing those errors which is coming in that data, right? Because data can have multiple errors, right? Some columns might be using some values. Like one example, if you have a data coming and your age field is there, right? And if date of birth field is showing you 1800 something, right? That is completely wrong, right? So it's like it is not possible that somebody was born in 1800 something and now he is still alive and you're using that data, right? So that is one example of, error, right? So you may also using data split. So you may have to split the data into two parts, training data set or testing data set. So training and testing data set is very, very important concept, which is being used for training the model, right? So you get some data, subset of the data for training, subset of the data for the validation, and utilize these two data sets while you're running a model. So this is a loading of the data, right? And then not just loading, right? You need to load the data in such a way that your data set is optimized, right? Because small data set is okay, it will load very easily. But if you have a large data set, I have seen terabytes of one file, huge file coming every day. And then when you load this data, it takes a couple of hours to load that file. So in order to make sure that you don't have any problem, you will have to make sure that your storage is particularly in a particular format like Parquet format or ORC format. You will make sure that your data is sampled accordingly, and then data sampling is done because uh, your exploration of the data is depending upon what kind of data you are exploring, and that sampling should be in such a way that it represent the whole data set, right? So these are the techniques. Like one example is caching, right? Caching is a very important where data is cached, and every time you access the data is taken from the cache. So that is where optimize the performance. Partitioning the data so that you partition the similar set of data into a specific set of partition, and whenever you try to access the data, you only access that partition to get insight. So instead of you searching the data across the different storage locations, that this particular data, like one example I can give you, that quarter one data is always kept in this particular bucket and in that particular partition. And whenever I try to access the quarter one data, quarter two data, quarter three or quarter four data for the year, I will go to that partition and access that data. So similarly, there are query tuning and then other techniques which is used for optimizing the jobs. So this is one example of loading your data, right? So in this example, what we have done, blob account name. So blob account name, this is account name. This is a container name in the storage account. And this is your path of the data set. And then we are going to use this Spark config set, and then we are going to point it to the storage account, right? And then we are going to, read this data in the Park, and then that, because this is a Parquet file, so that data is read, spark.read, and then the data will be entered into the data frame. Once you have the data in the data frame, then you will run the command like display, then it will display the data. And then you can do any further processing like convert this data into the pandas data frame and then start using it. So this is one example of data frame. Now, most of you guys might already be knowing about what is pandas, but for some of you who don't know that, so let's understand what is pandas and why it is so popular, right? So pandas is a special set of library which is a very powerful tool for data manipulation in the Python, right? It can handle data in a variety of formats like CSV, Excel, SQL database, and lots of different formats. And this is one of the de facto standard for any data analysis, right? And very easy to use, like data frame dot to pandas. You convert the data frame into the panda, and then you start using its methods. There are these ways you can access the data with different methods like head, tail, info, right? LOC, which is accessing the data. Descriptive statistics you can run on the top of the pandas data frame, and then you can manipulate the data by removing the duplicates like drop NA, right? Fill NA, like these are the missing, handling the missing data. So if you have a lots of missing data, you can use this drop, not like null, and fill those data with the different attributes. So these are the, so there are lots of methods, which it provides out of the box, right? And you can explore this help, which is readily available. And similarly, you have a data science. So uh, pandas is very important because it helps you to clean the data, right? And why it is important to clean the data? Because without cleaning the data, if you use it, your results will be completely wrong. So you cannot use a messy data and incomplete like data, and then you start analyzing the data and give a business decision from that data. So you need to make sure that your data is clean, it is up to date, and it is representing the real scenario, right? So how do we identify the missing data with this data frame dot is null, same kind of SQL syntax, right? Right. So it can also have like duplicate, how many duplicates are there? It is a sum of those duplicate values. It can drop the duplicate rows, right? It can also identify the outlier in the data. Outlier means if suppose you have a age of people, and now you can see that age is coming, maximum age and minimum age is 60, is a maximum age and minimum age is 10. Now suddenly there is a person age which is like 90. So that 90 age is outlier. So that is where the outlier detection is very important for cleaning the data. You also have a consistency in the categorical data. So we need to make sure that your data is consistent in the specific set of categories, right? So if there is a like data categorized in a, suppose one example, in a diabetic sample, you have a categories of male and female, and that data should be consistent in some way, right? So those consistency need to be maintained, right? And you need to check that whether that consistency is maintained or not. Like, and then finally you will apply some transformations on the data. So similar to that, there are descriptive statistics methods given in the notebook. And these are the methods like how do we, so what is descriptive statistics? Descriptive statistics is like creating a mean, mode, median, right? Describing the data in a statistical manner, finding the variance in the data, finding the range of the data, finding the standard deviation in the data. So all these statistics which we perform on the top of the data is called descriptive statistics. Why descriptive statistics? Because it gives you idea about, describe the data set, right? How this data set is. And then when you say descriptive means you are plotting the charts on the top of it. So for plotting the charts, you have this skewness and kurtosis. Skewness means the data is right side aligned or left side aligned, left skewness, right, right side it is aligned. So those are skewness, right? And then finally you do the different Python libraries are available to plot the data and then getting the value out of it. This is one example of um, descriptive statistics. So we have a blood pressure across the genders, right? So these are the male and female, and then we are trying to figure it out. What is a blood pressure maximum and minimum blood pressure in the male and female? So this data set shows that, right? And then we will learn about why visualizing this data, because if you don't visualize this data like this, right, you may not gain the insight that who have a more blood pressure, which gender has a more blood pressure. So visualization is a very, very important part. And when I say visualization, it is not just one type of chart. There are lots of charts available, right? Like one example, a histogram or box plot, scatter plot, bar chart, time series chart, different kind of visualizations are possible. And whenever you use any visualization, make sure that your visuals are very accurate. It is not misleading the values, because sometimes what happens, if your scale is not properly set in the graph, it will mislead you instead of giving you the good insight, right? And you will also have to understand you are not showing the very hardcore statistical values to a person who does not understand it. So that is where it is important to use this data visualization, keeping in mind the audience, right? Their knowledge. And always make sure that your visualization is clearly depicted. It shows what is, which label is what, which color is it is denoting, what kind of color is denoted for what purpose, right? So this is one example of visualization. Like I am actually using a BMI distribution for mean and median for BMI. We are using these are the scatter plot. We are trying to figure it out, that BMI versus target variable. So target value versus the BMI, what is the value? Right. So this is one example of it. This is another example where you are having a average blood pressure and BMI by each gender. So if you see, this is a BP and this is a BMI. So for each male and female, you are trying to visualize it. This is another visualization that BMI changes based on the age, like as and when the age is increasing in the right side, the BMI also changes. So BMI is also increasing, right? So you can say that this variable and this variable is related to each other, because as the age increases, the BMI increases, right? So this is called correlation, right? So this is very, very important. This is another example for heat map, right? So you have a variable in the left side, you have a variable in the X and Y, and you want to correlate whether there is a relationship between these two attributes. And that correlation is shown in the heat map. So whenever you have done this kind of basic statistics, right, then what you need to do, you need to do the advanced analytics on the top of the data. When I say advanced analytics means that we are no more doing the basic statistical analysis like mean, mode, median, and that kind of stuff. Instead, we are actually doing very advanced level analytics, and for that you need to know mathematics around it, right? So I will not go deeper into it, but just to give an idea that what are the correlation analysis, right? So you correlate two variables, right? And based on that correlation, you are trying to figure it out. You are doing a cluster analysis. Cluster analysis means you are trying to understand the chart with the help of cluster, right? What kind of cluster it is showing, right? There are multivariate analysis for handling multiple variables in the data set to understand what does this data show. Is there any correlation between these values, right? So that kind of statistics call, very advanced analysis, and this has its own value. And because this statistics is actually used in a large data set where you integrate the machine learning inside this and then use this advanced analytics on the top of it and create a predictive modeling, right? And that predictive modeling gives you an idea that, okay, this is a prediction of your data and this data is going in this direction, which means that based on the data, so far we have analyzed the data for last 1 year. Now my next year profit will be this, because the last year data says that profit is increasing every year this percentage. So I can easily predict that this year my profit will be this much, right? So this is one example, right? So So far, let's recap what we have learned, and then I will jump to a demo, quick demo. So first, we understood the key concepts and technique, discuss or like what are the fabric notebooks, what are the workspaces, why we use the pandas, and why it is very important tool for data manipulation. Then why it is very, very important to clean your data and then use it in the descriptive statistics, right? Then we also understood the value of the visualization to uncover the insights and pattern which is coming in the data. And then there are advanced techniques like multivariate analysis, right, which has its own value in understanding the real world scenario, because in real world scenario you will not use mean mode median, you will use this advanced analysis analytics, right? And then we also understand that fabric provides a different kind of tools, and you can go through the documentation for fabric. There are lots of labs given, right, and that will build your knowledge on the top of it. So with this, without wasting too much time, and we have covered enough base or theory, I will go to a demo, and then I will show you how I have used this concepts in a notebook, okay, in the fabric. So hope you can see my screen. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Um, so this is my workspace. You can see I have created a workspace Pune Tech session workspace, right? And okay, so let me. So this is the data frame. So let me load this data. Again, this is a Azure Open Dataset data frame, and there I have loaded the data from the open dataset. In this storage location, storage account, I have the blob container name as ML sample. And then in that blob container, I have a folder, diabetics folder, where I'm loading that diabetic folder in this. So once I loaded this data, I'm going to run this. So it's very easy to run this. I see it's like a normal Word document kind of thing, right? This notebook provides a code option and markdown option. Code option is where I'm running this code. Markdown option is where I have written this particular text. This is called markdown. This is called markdown, right? So if I double click it, it will come as a like this. But when the markdown is done and I click somewhere else, this will become like that. So this is a power of notebook, right? Now the this is data is loaded, and you can see that this is successful, right? And you can see it like this is successful, succeeded. Then I can display this data. What is this data show? So you can use shift enter, and then it will show the data. So now you understood what kind of data I have loaded. In this example, I'm loading the data for a data set where we have a different set of people with their different age, their sex, right, male or female, their BMI level, body to mass index, right, their BP, and then these are the different samples. Okay, these are the different samples taken, and those samples we are actually loading it, and then this is a outcome of these samples. So what does it show? That output shows the rows and columns of diabetic dataset. The data consists of 10 baseline variable. These are the 10 variables: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? And it also has 6 blood serum measurements. That means this S1, S2, S3, S4, S5, S6. These are the 6 time blood sample taken from the diabetic patients. Okay. And what we are trying to achieve with that sample, the Y value, which is coming in the right side. So this Y value, what does it show? It shows that response of a quantitative measure of disease progression 1 year after baseline, which is called label Y. That means Y is showing that how diabetes is progressing in these patients. So that value is coming in the Y. Y is a variable which shows that diabetes, right? So this is why shows that the progression of the diabetes in these patients with the help. So you have a data set where you have a age, sex, and BMI and other factors along with the blood sample. And then finally you are having a diabetic progression value Y, and you are trying to create a understanding from this data that what are the age group of people who are getting more diabetes, right? different kind of how many, whether it is male or female, who are going to get more diabetes of, right, or chances of diabetes, or how many people are there in the male or female category who have more BP problems. So you need to analyze those things. And in order to analyze those things, first and foremost, we are going to convert this data into the Panda. So very easy, data frame.pandas, and then this converted. And then this provides this options like head. Head option is used for, so let me run this, sorry. So let me run this. So when you say df.head, it actually shows the first column of the data frame, right? And df.info shows you the information about the data set. So it says that these are the data names, column names, and these are the data types. So now data is loaded now. Why I need to load it in the pandas? Because when you are loading this data into the Spark data frame, you can use a skitlearn. Skitlearn is a very important library for doing a advanced transformation on the top of the data set. So for that, you require a Spark data frame because skitlearn only work on the Spark data frame. And this is where you're actually using a pandas. So now you have a data, but before you can use this data, you will make sure that you should be knowing that how big is the data set, how many rows are there, how many columns are there. So now you see that these are the 442 rows in this data set, and these are the columns, total 11 columns in the data set. And these are the data types of the data set. So now you understand that these are the data types, and then you know how big is this data set in row and column. So essentially, if you see from a statistical perspective, this data set has 11 columns, which means that you have a 442 rows. 442 rows means I have a sample of 442 people. That is a sample size. And then 11 features. Features means the things which is changing, right? Age, sex, and all that. These are the changing values, right? And then we have a sex variable, which means that there are two categories of people. So that means this is a categorical value, right? So this is how your data is interpreted, right? You understand the data first, then you understand that okay, this data set is there. Let me see what is missing in this data set. So when I run this command df.is null, it clearly shows that there is not no missing values, right? Every value is like 100% accurate and it is populated, right? So everything is like there is no missing value. Now, for us to understand this data set, we will do the descriptive analytics. In descriptive analytics, what we do, we describe this data frame with a df.describe. So this is your description of the now in this data frame. It gives you a good insight. What is that insight? It says that average age is approximately 48.5 year. OK, so what is average age? Here you can see 48.5. And the standard deviation is 13.10, right? And it is also showing that youngest individual is 19. If you see minimum, this is 19, and maximum individual is 78, right? And BMI, average BMI here is, this is a BMI, and average BMI is 26.4, right? So average BMI is this, right? So which means that this average BMI shows that it is a overweight category, because if you go to the WHO website, the BMI of 26.3 is a obese category. That means this person, the most of the people are obese category, right? And minimum BMI is 18 and maximum is 42. So average is 26. So average itself showing that all these diabetic patients are obese, right? So that means there is a understanding that people who got a diabetic has a obese tendency, right? So it shows that. Now let's go to the next step. How do we understand this data more? For us to understand this data more, we are going to plot this data in a graph. For that, we are going to use Matplotlib library, right? And Matplotlib library will actually plot this data in a particular graph. So let me show you that how it works. Okay, so so there is some problem in this. For it, let me see. This works fine. Okay, somewhere syntax error is there. Okay, so actually why it is not working because the data is already loaded. So what we will do, if you see this graph, right? In this graph, you will find a unique pattern of range and distribution of BMI. Okay, so I will show you the graph very quickly. Somewhere I think this code has some problem. Oh, let me check where the problem coming from. Okay, here is this problem. Because this is not a Python syntax, right? That's why I just pasted it by mistake. Okay, so now you see this is a BMI distribution of the patients, mean and median. So this shows mean and this is showing median. What does it show? In this graph, it shows that range and distribution of BMI in this data set. For example, most of BMI falls within this range. That means this BMI value between 23.2 to 29.2. Most of the BMI is, and it is the data is right skewed. Why? What is right skewed? If you see right side of the graph, it is differently made than left side. Left side is symmetric, right side is unsymmetric. So it is this kind of skewing is called right skewed because right side it is different. So now we will do a multivariate analysis. What is multivariate analysis? When you have different parameters on a statistics and you want to find out the um, correlation between these values, then you use a multivariate analysis. So in multivariate analysis, if you do in the Python, it's very easy. One example, you can use the Matplotlib library for plotting the graph, and this is what it does. So if I run this, this code gives this idea that BMI versus target variable. So here the target variable is Y and BMI is X. So what is the correlation between Y and X? It can see that BMI is increasing as and when that what happens? BMI increases, the target variable also increases. So if you go right side, then this is also increasing and this is also increasing because the graph is going in this direction diagonally. So there is a some relationship is there that shows there is some relationship. Now let's see blood pressure analysis across different genders. So if we create a blood pressure analysis, we will easily find that blood pressure profile of male and female patient. On average, female patient has a high blood pressure than male patients, right? So it is clearly visible, right? This is a female and this shows that this is higher side, lower side. Now what we can do the next level of analysis for aggregating the data and can make more manageable insight for the visualization. So in this, we are saying that BMI and BP, what is a correlation for female and male? Clearly visible that female has a more BMI and BP and male have a less BP and male. So this is clearly shown. So then we want to know that is BMI is increasing based on the or body mass index is increasing as and when the age of a person progresses. So for that, we again create a graph in the Matplotlib and run this code. And once you run this code, it will show you that there is a correlation, right? Because this is a BMI, this is your age. So as and when the age increases, the BMI value is also increasing, right? So there is a correlation around it, right? And if you see very clearly, the age group of 19 to 30 year has a lowest average BMI. 19 to 30 year has a lowest. See, this is the lowest. While the highest average BMI is found at the age of 65 to 79 here. So now what we are going to do, we are going to do a correlation analysis. Correlation analysis, this is a correlation analysis. So it gives you end-to-end correlation to understand is there any correlation between these values, right? So the best tool to do correlation is heat map. which is a very good visual tool. And if you run this heat map, okay, there is some problem here again. Let me quickly run it, heat map. So this heat map shows there is a relationship. And what is that relationship? Let's see. S1 and S2 variables. So if you see, this is S1 and then this is S2. So on the intersection of S1 and S2, there is a 0.9 value, which says that if the value is reaching to near to 1 or 0.9 or 0.89, there is a high correlation between S1 and S2, right? And similarly, there is another correlation, right, which is saying that S3 and S4. So if you go S3 here and then S4 here, this is 0 minus 74. When the value is minus, it is a negative correlation. When value is positive, it is a positive correlation. So in the S1 and S2 is a positive correlation, and then S3 and S4, it is a negative correlation, right? So negative correlation means that if one value increases, the another value decreases. And then positive means both are increasing together. This is called negative and positive correlation. So with this, we have covered how to make an insight between different variables, right? With the different samples in the fabric. And we have covered almost like we have covered everything in terms of, you know, how do we create a workspace? How do we ingest the data? How do we make sure that data is clean, there is no discrepancy in the data? How do we assess the results from the data and then finally visualize this in a different graphs to make a sense out of it and then use it for the insight? So in this example, you can see that there is a correlation between these two variables, and then there is a negative correlation between these two variables, which means there is our understanding about the male female candidates, their age, how the age progresses, then diabetes also increases, BMI also increases. All these findings are confirmed. So I think that's pretty much from my side. Thank you for joining. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. Let me see if there are questions around it.
Thanks, Rajnish. We don't have any questions, but yeah, if anybody in the audience, if you have any question, feel free to
Just one
unmute. We can,
question.
yeah,
Yeah,
go
Are you
ahead.
please.
able to? Yeah. I mean, so this with Microsoft Fabric, I mean, do you have any experience of handling large set of data, or I mean, is there any limitation of handling the data here?
No, so it is something like if you have a huge data, you need to increase the capacity of the fabric, right? And but I mean, when you say limitation, what is your requirement? Like how big is your data set?
No, I'm just asking in general. Like, if we are, I mean, let's say, if we are proposing client this particular solution, then definitely this all things will come in picture. That will there be any throttling or something, right?
Yeah,
So
so
from that,
there are techniques to handle that. First of all, example is that don't use very large files. For that, you need to split that file. Second is you need to use the Parquet file, right? Or the latest standard is delta format, which is very helpful to do that, because if you are using different formats, then it's not recommended. Third is that there are optimization required. Like in one of the slide, if I go back again, let me share that quickly. What are the optimization techniques you will be using? So so in this slide, I just briefly touched upon those topics. Yes, here it is. So if you partition the data, right, your speed will be much faster because you are partitioning. There are lots of blog I have written on performance optimization, right? So you can go through those blogs, but in a nutshell, I can say that you need to make sure your uh, queries are tuned. You are using a broadcast variables when you are loading the large set of data, right? There is a new features coming in Fabric. Yesterday, day before yesterday, we met with the product team and they shown us a result based caching, which is a brand new feature, right? So it is not just loading the data, but you have to architect it properly. You don't architect it properly, you will definitely face the issues. You need to also do the scaling of the fabric, understand that what kind of workloads are coming, how will you design your data lake, right? So there are lots of things in that, so full engineering, data engineering cycle involved in that, right? But definitely this tool is capable to handle that for because it is based on the Spark. And forget about what Microsoft is giving. It's actually at the end of the day, it is a Spark. Spark engine is capable to handle millions of records, trillions of records, and I have seen that in multiple customers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other question, guys, before we wrap it up?
Thanks, Rajnish. Let me stop the recording.